Okay, now I've got a project that I hope you'll like. It has a lot of different features in it than what you've seen before. Some that you've seen and just extensions. And basically how it works is this, in Ron's Pet Store. You pick an animal that you want to buy and it pops in a price like we've done before. But what's different about this one, it shows a little picture of the critter over on the right side in a little picture box, okay? I'm going to show you how I did that. I went ahead and added pricing just like we did before, and I always start off with one quantity, but if you want to, you can buy 5 horses if you want, if you have that much money. When you hit checkout, it does the math, a little expensive for a horse, um, and the exit button does what you expect. But a couple things different though. This one uses a little drop down menus, and I wanted to show you how to make these because these are really cool. And of course, when you hit file exit, it kills it. But the other one I wanted to show you is something called an about box. You've probably seen these on software for a long time, and these just kind of give information about a particular product. And I want to show you how to make the about box, and I want to show you where it gets this information because it does all this for you automatically. And then I want to show you how to display it in what's called a modal form, because if you notice now, if I try to go back to that other form and say, wait a minute, you got to close me, buddy, before you do anything. And so you want to close that, and then you can get back to your regular form. So here we are exploring multiple forms, drop down menus, showing thumbnails, all that kind of cool stuff. All the math stuff and all that and the formatting is stuff you've already done, so we don't have to spend much time on that. So let's see how I built this little puppy. If you're going to build this, you go ahead and put in the different controls. This is a regular list box. This is a picture box like I showed you before. It's just going to show the thumbnails. These are all just text boxes: txt item, txt price, txt quantity. This is LBL tax, LBL total, LST products. You can see that. And this is PIC thumbs for picture box. BTN checkout, BTN quit, I called it. But up here is the main picture box that shows the banner for the pet store, and I call that PIC banner, you can see there. But let's talk about adding these menus because they're kind of fun. When you have a new form, and I think what I'll do is I'll add a new form just so I can show you, and then I'll get rid of it. I take a new Windows form and I'll just call it Form 1 just to mess with. If you want to add those menus, you come down to the toolbox and look under Menus and Toolbars, and you're going to choose a menu strip. Now they have context menu strips. That's where you can right click on something and see something. So you can do all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to do a menu strip. Just double click it, and what you'll find is that it will add a menu strip component down here in the tools component tray. Remember we did this when we did tooltips. I told you there'd be lots of different things that could go in here. Well, it's very cool. You can design this at design time. So here is the first item that you want to click into, and I'm just going to call it the file menu. So you just type in file, and then you can type in exit if you want to, and these are going to work just like buttons do. And I can type over here, I can say about, I can type another one that says help. I can come down here and say, when they type help, they say good luck. This one says support. Okay. I'm even going to show you how you can make a line between them. So let's say I wanted to have a line here between this and my phone number. If I go into this one and I just do a hyphen like that and hit enter, it puts in a line, as you'll see. And then down here I'll say phone number or something, or how to contact us. Okay. Now when you run this, what will happen is the menus will pop down just like they do in Windows, but you can see, you can actually check them out right here. Okay. Now to make them work, I would double click on this exit button, and now I have an event handler for that. They call it exit tool strip menu item click. Now typically what I do is I rename those to something like MNU file exit so I can keep track of it better, but I'm not going to do that here, just to kind of give you an idea how this works. Okay. The other thing, let me get rid of this. The other thing that I want to show you is how to do that about box. So you go into your project right here, you're going to right click and say I want to add a new item, and you'll see you can add all these different things in C#. Just make sure it's coming up in C#. You see right here an about box, and you double click that. I just leave it called about box 1, and you add that, and that will show up in your Solution Explorer right here. There's mine. I already did it. Okay. So this form I'm not going to use anymore, so I'm going to right click and say delete. It says, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. I'm going to go back to just my 2 forms. Okay, so let's see what I did in the code for these menus. Just to begin with, I double clicked on this one and I said btn quit perform click. I want you to write this down because this is a way of telling it to run up here into this event handler where the btn quit is and run this code. Now, why did I do that? Well, I want to be able to quit this app from the click button, the btn quit. That's normal. I also want to kill it from this tool strip menu. You don't ever put the same code twice in an application. If you need to use this.close in 3 or 4 places, then you tell it to go jump into this and run that code. You do it that way. You don't put this.close down here. Because I may want to put it later on, I may want to come, message box says, are you sure you want to quit? And I would have to duplicate that down here, and that's just bad programming. You don't ever want to do that. Okay, so that's how I did that. Now, when I did the About box, I double clicked on that, and it created a handle here for the About box. Okay, here's how you show another form. When you want to make a new form, you have to create one from scratch in code. So you want to say, I need to make a new form. So you use the form from the form class. So type in form, capital F. It should be turquoise, which means it's a class. It's part of .NET Framework. It's the same way Microsoft built our main form. And then give it a name. And I just called it my About box. That is going to be equal to a new FRM about. Because when I added this About box right here, that's what I called him. So if you go into his properties here, push F4, you'll see that I called it FRM about. That's what I changed its name to. Okay. So when you come in here, I want to make a new one. What that'll do is it'll create it in memory. It's not on screen yet. And to show it on screen, you say my about box dot show dialog. Now I'm showing it as what is called a modal form. And remember when I showed you that? That means you cannot switch back to the main form until you close this About box. You don't want to have multiple forms open in most of your apps. That'll really confuse your users and you'll get into all kinds of problems. So I'm just simply going to create this form when they click on this the About box menu item. I'm going to create it right here, and I'm going to create an instance of it. Now it's running, and then I'm going to show it as a dialog. As soon as it runs, let me run it again. As soon as it's displayed like this and pulls up this information, when you say OK, it automatically closes itself. You don't have to do anything about that. All right. Now, where does it get its information? Well, let's look up here in a little place. There are all kinds of features and all kinds of little hidden things going on behind the scenes that Visual Studio does for us. Let me show you this one. If you go up to the properties of your project, now here you'll see Ron's Pet Store Demo underneath its properties. Here's what I do. Just double click where it says properties, and it comes up with this box, and it'll give you the name of what your program is going to be called. It tells you what version of the .NET Framework you're using and some other things. But over here under assembly information, I went ahead and filled this out. Now normally it doesn't have anything in it. I just made a title, I gave a description, I put down my company, and I put down the version number of it, and then I said OK. Now when the About box comes up, it pulls all that information right there from that little thing that I showed you, but it does it in a really nice way so that people can see what your program is like. The icon, all this stuff, all comes with it. So if you don't like that, I think there's a way to change that. The only thing I did was I think I changed the caption of this. I don't remember, no, maybe not. Maybe it did that too, and it just grabbed it from this. Okay, but they're just kind of fun to use. And you can do the same kind of thing with any other form. So let's say you were in here doing something and you, instead of showing an about box, you had another form that showed a list of songs or a list of videos or a list of movies that you wanted people to pick from. This is how you would do it. Okay, it's a lot of fun. All right, now let's go back to the top and look at some of these features that I put in here. First of all, in my project, I made a folder for images, and I just simply right-clicked and I said add, and I said new folder, okay? And then I renamed it to images, and inside my images folder, I went and got a bunch of pictures off the internet, and I named them this, okay? And I just added them in there. I also put in a pet store banner, pet store banner small JPEG. I added all those into images so I could have them all in one nice place. When the program runs and I want it to show my images, because you'll see it doesn't even show the banner when I start it, when it's sitting there, but when it runs it shows this nice pet store banner. In order to do that, I wanted that to show up as soon as the form was loaded. So what I did was I created an event handler for the form by double clicking on it, and it's called the form load event. You see that? And I called my form FRM store. If you don't rename your form, it's going to say form 1. The form load event, I want you to know some things about this. First of all, no matter what your form is called, we always call it the form load event. Second thing is, any code you put in here always executes just before the form is visible. And remember, I told you in a previous video, when you start your application, it starts up with our main form, and then it runs this initialized component, which is a bunch of source code that Visual Studio created for us that puts all of our controls on the form and gets it all ready to go, but it doesn't show it. And I told you that just before it shows the form, it checks one more place to see if there's any last minute changes you want. Well, this is the last minute change that you can make. This is the form load event, and I wanted to load some stuff in here just before it was visible. Now I'm going to close this, move this for you. Now some of this is going to look incredibly familiar to you, I hope. Let's take a look at this. Here's how I added items to the list box. You remember when we did it before? We went into the items property and I put it in that little editor doodad. Well, I didn't do that this time. And you can tell that immediately because when you look at this in design mode, there are no items in here. And if we went into the items collection over here, into this box that we used before, there's nothing in there. So this is how you would add items to a list box in code. So write that down somewhere, working with list boxes. And I put in birds and I hit spacebar, spacebar, spacebar. Remember, no tabs. Space over, and I put in my price. But look, this time I added another thing. I kept going with spacebar, spacebar, and I went over here a little ways, typed in bird.jpg. These are the names of the little pictures, the JPEG files that I had to show for each of the animals that they might select. So if in the list box, when they click turtle, it's going to take this part and put in the item box. It's going to take this part and put in the price. We've done that before. But then I'm going to keep going and say, hey, take this last part, go all the way to the end of the line, and make that show up in the picture box so that when they select something, it does all three of those things. So let me move it down here a little bit so you can see. I'm going to collect birds, and it's going to take these first few characters from birds, strip off the blanks, put it down here. It's going to go over here a little ways. It's going to pick up from here to here, let's say. I don't remember which numbers I used. We'll see in a minute. And whack all the blanks and put the price down here. As long as you whack the blanks, it doesn't make any difference how close they are. And then I move over here a little bit to some other column and say read to the end, and it puts the little picture in the picture box, and I'll show you how I assign that. Okay, but before I do that, I want to show you how I loaded this guy so that it would show up immediately when the program started. And I did that right up here also in the form load event. And this is a little bit of a trick, and that's why I want to explain something to you. In order to make it work, you type in the name of your picture box and then you do .image, and then this says equal image from file. Now you really need to write this down someplace because you'll never remember this. I never remember this, because you don't do it very often, but it's a very cool thing to have. And then in parentheses, you just simply put in the path on your hard drive where your picture is. And mine was in my images folder. But you're going to look at that and say, well, Ron, what's all that backslash stuff and those dots? Okay, let me explain something to you. If you go to your project and you click on this little goober over here that says show all files, you'll see another folder called bin. Now if you're doing that with me, just click on that over here. And you see two of them. One is called debug and one is called release. When you're all finished with your application, what you're going to want to do when we've been running it up here, you want to change this from debug to release. And that makes your project a lot smaller, and it takes out a whole bunch of debugging code. Debugging code is simply the code that Visual Studio uses to help us recognize that we left out a semicolon or we misspelled something or whatever. That's what we do when we're trying to fix it. We're debugging it, getting rid of the bugs in it. But when you're finished with it and you want to ship it and sell it or put it on the store or something, you want to definitely do it in release mode. In either case, when you're finished, you're going to have a program in there, a file rather, that has the name of your project, and it's a .exe. You see that? Now in Windows, when you see an exe, it's called an executable file. If we were to take that and double click on it, it would run your app. Now let me show you. You can't do it from in here, but let me show you how you can do it. If you go to your project and right click on it and say open folder in File Explorer, this will take you right to where your project is. Okay, you go into bin, go into debug, because I didn't make one for release yet, so there's nothing in there, and there's Ron's Pet Store demo. Now look, it's only 50,000 bytes big, 50K. That is super, super small, way smaller than the smallest picture. If I double click it, it runs my app. Here's what I want you to write down. This executable that you find in this binary folder, the bin folder, this is called your assembly. Now, this is all you would give your friend, your grandma, anybody who wants to see your project. You don't have to give them Visual Studio. They don't have to have C# or VB or anything else that you wrote it in. All they need to have is a computer that has a .NET framework on it that matches the one you used when you build all this. Now you say, well, Ron, how do I find that out? Well, let's go back to the properties of our project for a minute, and it says it right there. Okay, mine's 4.5, so it's going to run in Windows 12 and 13 and 15. Now, if Grandma has an old XP computer, she's back in Louisiana, and she would love to see what you're building, but you know she has an old XP computer. Well, it probably doesn't have this latest framework, so you know what you can do? You pick this and you say, I want to use Framework 2 so it'll work on Grandma's old machine. You don't have anything fancy schmancy in your application that would keep it from not running on .NET Framework 2. Trust me. So you pick 2, your project reloads real fast, and then you could rerun it and get it all set up, and then you could give that to Grandma. All you have to do is set up an email, and I think I still have it there, don't I? Set up an email for her and attach this file and say, Grandma, attach this, put it on your desktop, and double click it, and you'll see the app. The reason that works is because if you have Windows on your computer, you already have the .NET framework on the computer, so all your users, including Grandma, are going to have that. And 99% of all the pieces and parts they need to run your application is already on their computer. You don't have to ship it, you don't have to give it to them. This is a wonderful, wonderful way to do programming and be a developer, because you don't have to give people all the stuff they need to run it, like you do in Java. And then they have to keep doing updates and stuff. Now this again is called an assembly. And it's written and it's put together in something what Microsoft calls MSIL, Microsoft Intermediate Language. Here's why. The way Microsoft does is say, we want to take all this source code, remember this is source code, and we have to convert it to something called machine code. Machine code are the instructions that the CPU, your hardware inside your device, computer, laptop, phone, car, uses in order to make all this happen. It can't understand birds, horse, fish, LST products. It has no clue what any of that means. So this all has to be translated or reinterpreted into something the computer could use. And it's really a two-step process. First of all this source code, when I go up here and say build, if I say build Ron's Pet Store, as soon as I build that, and you can see it's down here, it says build succeeded, it goes pretty fast. I just recreated this assembly right there. That just took all my stuff and I put it in MSIL. When I send that to Grandma and she double clicks on it, then it's converted in the final step to machine code, and it's optimized for whatever computer it's on. So for Grandma's XP, it's optimized for an XP computer. If you gave it to your friend down the street that had 16 gigs of RAM and 16 processors and who knows what kind of graphics card, it would be optimized for that system and run way better. Okay, so that's one of the things that Microsoft has. So you pick the language that you want, and then it gets turned into this. So if you write it in VB, or if you write it in C# or C++, when it gets to this level here with the MSIL, they're almost all identical. So you really can't tell which language it was written in at all. Okay, so that's the assembly. Now here's the next part. Where is the assembly? Write that down in your notes. I showed you this. It's in the bin folder. Okay. Now what I need to do is I need to tell my program, I need you to get to these images here, this guy right here. Okay. Here's what happens when you run your app and you run it in Visual Studio. It's going to look here first to try to find your project. That's called the default directory or default folder. It won't find my images folder. The only way it's going to find my images if I was to copy them and put them in here, and that would be a bad way to go. You don't do that. So what I need to do to tell the computer, I say, you know, you're sitting down here, I need you to come back one level to the debug thing, then I need you to come back another level up to the bin folder, and once the operating system is looking at this level, because these are all nested inside here, then it's going to find my images folder because they are on the same level. So I have to tell it to come back 2 levels, okay, because this is really nested down inside here. So what you do in C# is you come in here and you use 2 dots and a backslash and another backslash. This means come up 1 level, then come up another level, and then you will find my images folder. And then inside the images folder, you will find my picture, my banner. And we take the banner and put it in the picture box. Now the reason that we use 2 backslashes is because when you use 1, that can be used as something called an escape code. And those are kind of a shorthand for making things show up with a new line or a carriage return and other things that I'll teach you. But that's why we have to use 2 of them. They're not comments. Notice there's a backslash, so that's the key right above your enter key. It looks like it has a backslash. It has a vertical line. That vertical line is a pipe. We use that for other things too, but this is how you would tell the program where your folder is. Now for Grandma, you're going to have to send her this assembly, and you're going to have to send the images folders. You're going to have to attach both of those and say, Grandma, put those on your desktop. Then it will find it. Okay. Now once it finds that folder, then it will be able to find the ones that they select. So this loads them, gets everything ready. Now let's see what happens when they select one. All right, they go down here and they click on an item in the list box. You remember that selected index changed is what we call the default event handler for a list box. It's not clicked. Now what I did was I just went ahead and set the quantity in the text box to 1 because I wanted this to work. If you have a 0 or a blank or something, if you have a 0 it's okay, but if you have a blank, then the thing's not going to be able to do the math. And so I just trying to make it easy on myself. But you can change it. As you saw, I bought extra horses. And I decided to make the text and the total thing, let's just clear those out so that every time they select something, it'll have a new price, and I just wanted to start fresh. Down here is using the substring, and this is very similar to what we did before. I'm going to make a new variable called item chosen. I'm going to go into the list box, into its text property. Remember, use the text property when using substring. And we're going to start at character 0 and take the first 10. and whack all the blanks. I put a note here for you, and then put it over into this variable. So that's going to take what they chose, dog, fish, horse, whatever. Then I'm going to tell it to start at character 20 and go 15 from there. So this is going to go from 20 over to 35. And trim off the blanks, and that'll be my price. Remember, the prices were in the middle here, these guys. And then finally, I'm going to grab the name of my little animal, the picture, by using substring, and I'm just going to start at 40. And remember, I told you if you're going to use substring and you give it a start instruction or a start character, but you don't give it a stop, then it'll read all the way to the end of the line. So this is going to go over here to character 40, somewhere in there, read all the way to the end of the line, and you notice I didn't worry about lining them up. You don't have to. And then it will trim off any blanks here, and then it'll show that up in the picture for the animal over here on this one. Okay? I haven't shown you how to do that yet, but that's next. So make sure you understand all this, because this can be very handy for you, and more importantly, it shows you different ways you can do programming, and it may trigger some ideas that you may have in the future. Now we're going to come down here and we're going to take the item they chose right there in that variable. We're going to toss it into our text box. That's cool. We've done that. Take the price, put it in that box. And then finally we're going to do the same thing I did up here with the banner in the front. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to load it into a different picture box. I just called it PIC thumbs for thumbnails. Image is going to be system, drawing, image from file. And then again, I've got to come back 2 levels, because remember, we're over here. So it's the same thing, 2 dots and a backslash, 2 dots, 2 blah, 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 images. And then I'm going to append the item photo, and that's this guy right here. So it will know, in this variable, it will know what the name of the JPEG file is. Okay? Once it has all that, it will show up the information just like I showed you. It's going to grab birds, whack out the blanks, put it here, grab the price, put it here, get the picture of the bird, put it here. And then when you hit checkout, it's just going to do the math like we've done many times before. Let's just check to see that you know what's going on here, because I made a few changes just to show you some options you have. This time when I kept track of the number of items that they bought, because they may want to buy, 5 birds, I don't know. Instead of making it an integer, I made it a short integer, and I just wanted to show you that in order to do that, you just type in the word short. You don't type in short int or anything like that. So short, make a note, short equals short integer. It's a 16-bit integer, not a 32, and it's referred to as int16. Remember me showing you that on IntelliSense? I went ahead and set him to 0. I set the sales tax rate using a decimal. Okay, that's what I called it. And this time it's 7 3/4%. And I used the little m so that the compiler, which is responsible for translating our source code into MSIL and then eventually into machine code, will go ahead and use a decimal type, not a double type. I went ahead and made these other 3 variables as decimals, and so now all I have to do is assign them. So I took stuff out of the price box, converted to decimal, put it in there. I took the stuff out of the quantity, converted it into int16. Now make sure if you're going to use the 16-bit integer, you use the same conversion here. When you hover over this, see what the mouse says? It says short convert dot to int16. And then you put in a string value inside the parentheses. That's what that means. Okay? And I just pop it in that variable. Then I went ahead and did the math like we've done before. I take the sales tax rate times the number of items times the price. We haven't necessarily dealt with number of items before, but you just have to remember that's how you would do it if you were doing it in your head or with a calculator. We did the sales tax times the price. That's cool, but then you got to remember, what if they buy 2 fish or 10 fish? You don't want to cheat yourself if you're the owner of the store. And then finally, this is all the same as what we've done. You're just going to convert these back to strings after you convert the total price. You're going to convert these back into strings so you can display them. Okay, and again, my total price is, I took the item price times the number of items. I put those in parentheses, so it would do that first, and then I added the tax. So you just have to be careful how you do this so you get the right answer and you don't rip off your customers or cheat yourself. And then I don't think there's anything else down here that I haven't shown you. So, okay, so remember this is just a way to make it jump up here and run this code. So we're saying this is basically says, hey, run up here and run the btn quick click event. That's what this means. Okay, and also remember and review how you show a new form. You're going to create a new memory location. You're going to say, I want to create this new form, and it's going to be in memory somewhere, and this variable right here will have the actual memory location of your form so that the program can go get it and show it down here. That's how that works. All right, now I know that's a lot of stuff, but I think it's good stuff, and I know that there's things in here that you're going to use a lot, and they're just there's just a lot to this programming, I know, but if you'll go through this slowly and you practice and you download this and look at it, I think you'll get a much better flavor and feeling for what all this is about. All right, thank you.